This is Land of Havilah, Psalm 92. It's 15 verses. It's a song of praise to Yahweh, especially how he upholds the righteous and in the end brings the wicked to ruin. Verse 1. A psalm, a song for the Sabbath day. It's a good thing to give thanks to Yahweh, to sing praises to your name, Most High, to proclaim your loving kindness in the morning and your faithfulness every night, with the 10-stringed lute, with the harp, and with the melody of the lyre. For you, Yahweh, have made me glad through your work. I will triumph in the works of your hands. How great are your works, Yahweh! Your thoughts are very deep. A senseless man doesn't know, neither does a fool understand this. Though the wicked spring up as the grass, and all the evildoers flourish, they'll be destroyed forever. But you, Yahweh, are on high forevermore. For behold your enemies, Yahweh, for behold your enemies shall perish. All the evildoers will be scattered. But you have exalted my horn like that of the wild ox. I'm anointed with fresh oil. My eye has also seen my enemies. My ears have heard of the wicked enemies who rise up against me. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He'll grow like a cedar in Lebanon. They are planted in Yahweh's house. They will flourish in our God's courts. They will still produce fruit in old age. They'll be full of sap and green, to show that Yahweh is upright. He is my rock, and there's no unrighteousness in him. Comment: most of the psalm is immediately clear. Just a few things might need clarification. In verse 3, there are some musical instruments, the harp, lyre, and 10-stringed lute. This brings to mind the origin of the word psalm. It derives from the Greek word psalmos, which means to pluck, as in to pluck a stringed instrument. The psalms are called the Tehillim in Hebrew, which comes from the root word hallel, which means to praise. So the concept behind the English word for this book is to pluck, and behind the Hebrew name for it is to praise. Therefore the Psalms are plucking and praising. In verse 4, you, Yahweh, have made me glad through your work, meaning I like what you have done. In verse 8, you, Yahweh, are on high forevermore, meaning you're above all forever, ruling and reigning. In verse 10, there's an idiom we've seen many times in the Old Testament about the horn being exalted. Quote, you have exalted my horn like that of the wild ox, end quote. For God to exalt a person's horn is something similar to making his muscles grow. It means God's giving him power and dominance the same way a wild ox with big horns is dominant. There's so much use of that idiom, no doubt we should take it to heart that God empowers us to live the Christian life. Speaking of overcoming all sorts of hardships, quote, and all these things were more than conquerors through him who loved us, Romans 8:37. He gives us big horns. In verse 11, my eye has also seen my enemies. My ears have heard of the wicked enemies who rise up against me. Since that comes right after the statement about exalting the horn, it probably means I've encountered the enemy and had the power to overcome him. In verse 7, though the wicked spring up like grass and all the evildoers flourish, they'll be destroyed forever, end quote. It's another reminder for us not to be confused and confounded when we see the wicked prosper. Some do prosper, but not forever. In the scheme of things, they're like the grass which is here today and withers tomorrow. In contrast, in verses 12 and 13, the righteous flourish like a palm tree and like a cedar of Lebanon. And in verses 14 and 15, the righteous age well, quote, they will still produce fruit in old age. They'll be full of sap and green to show that Yahweh is upright, end quote. Our bodies might wither in old age, but in spirit will be full of sap and green, still producing fruit. It's good compensation for us even as our bodies are decaying. If someone calls us old, we should answer that we're still producing fruit, still full of sap and green. Psalm 93 is next.